Once upon a time, in a room full of wonders, where every step leads to magic, and the journey of a true story begins here, with amazing guests and true miracles. Please like and subscribe for more amazing videos.
Oh, thank you, Daniela, for having me on your show. And I should say, guten Tag. Yeah, so I don't know how much you know about near-death experience, or in my case, I call it a BFD, back from death, because I actually was pronounced clinically dead from about 10 to 13 minutes when I was 19 years old. I was in the Air Force Academy, and I was in this car, if you can see that. It was a 1965 Corvette convertible, and that's the passenger side. And I was thrown out along with the driver of the car. It turned out that he was a drunk driver. I did not realize that. And we hit a huge boulder. The car flipped, fishtailed is what we call it here. It turns around like that, and then it had struck the boulder, and we both were ejected from the car. It was a convertible. We did not have seatbelts on, and I landed in a ditch a little bit away from the car, and some bystanders heard the crash, and they called our emergency services. And by the time the paramedics and the ambulance and fire all got out, there was about 10 to 13 minutes. Bystanders had checked to see if I had a pulse or anything. They couldn't get any kind of life out of me, so they put a blanket over me and said that I was dead when the first responders got there. And so what happened was the EMT, emergency medical technician, took the blanket off. He couldn't get any vitals on me, and finally did something called a sternal knuckle press, which is in the healthcare industry. It's designed to elicit pain in the body. And when he did that, the only sign of life he could get on me, Daniela, was my right pupil flinched and dilated. That was it. That was the only sign of life. And have you ever heard of this saying called our eyes are the window to our soul? Have you heard that before? Okay, so, well, not the third eye. It's just our eyes are portals and gateways for our soul, which is an energy, a consciousness to come in and out of, because we are spiritual beings in a human body. So our soul part of us lives on, that energy, that consciousness. And that is what left me when I was pronounced dead. It flew out of my body and went over to the other side. And when the paramedic was working on me, my soul came back from the other side in through my right eye. That's how it came in, and they were able to resuscitate me, revive me. And they got a blood pressure of 60/0, which, if you know anything about blood pressure, that's 120/80 is normal. So I was just barely hanging on, and they did CPR the entire 20 minutes it took to get to the nearest community hospital. I had massive injuries, massive. I had amputated my left foot, broken my wrist, my pelvis. I was bleeding from the bones. It's a terminology when your body goes into that state of shock. Multiple lacerations and cuts and fractures. So I was very, very sick. And that night they just tried to stabilize me in the hospital. And I was completely unconscious the entire time. I woke up the following day in the ICU and could not remember anything except bright white lights. And if you know anything about near-death experiences, that is the most common characteristic or symptom that people talk about, is this brilliant, iridescent, incandescent white light. And there's no pain with the light. There's no, like a deer in the headlights. You don't feel it like blinding you in any way. It actually is extremely soothing and peaceful and loving and calm. And it's like I was in this chrysalis, just enveloped in this white light, which actually was energy, a love energy of what I call God. And it felt like I was an astronaut out in outer space, just full of awe and wonder. There's absolutely no pain associated with it. And I do want to tell your audience that when you or someone has a crash or some kind of trauma where it's very painful, that most of the time, 99% of the time, your soul will leave your body before impact. So your physical body, you don't ever feel that pain. And to this day, I've never felt the pain of the impact of the car crash. Now, when I woke up in the hospital, I felt all the pain from my injuries, of course, because I was back in my physical body. But when you leave it, your soul somehow leaves you before it actually, that pain and death actually occur. So I spent the next 4 months in the hospital, and I was like this. I was on a roller coaster with life and death. I had another near-death experience in an operation where my body, during the operation, it code blue, which is cardiac arrest. You're dying on the operating table, and they actually called time of death on the operating table, and pronounced me dead again. Went and told my parents that I had passed away, and then a couple of minutes later, my heart started beating on its own. And Daniela, you can't explain this. The medical professionals can't explain it either. My doctor just kept saying it's something supernatural, something bigger than you, Nicole, is at work here trying to keep you alive. And I remembered later, I loved that white light, and I was trying to go back to that white light in the operating room. I wanted to go because it was so comforting and peaceful and beautiful. I did not want to be in the pain and the suffering that I was in my body. And so my angel got me and said, no, you got to get back in your body. And I didn't want to. I was like, no, I want to go back. So it's been quite an experience for me over the last 41 years to actually remember it, because my memory did come back 19 years later after the crash of exactly what happened. And I remembered going to the other side and talking with angels, and my message that I was given on the other side was to tell people not to be afraid of death. I could see when my memory came back, and I remembered an angel came when I cried out. I went through the windshield and through I was in the passenger seat, and I went butt up through the windshield, and I got caught, like froze in that place up there, and I knew when I hit the ground I was going to die. I just knew it. And I cried out, oh my God, help me. And at that moment, an angel came down and took me up to heaven, the other side, whatever you want to call it. And I clearly remember it being a male. And in the book, I talk a lot about Casper the Friendly Ghost, because that's what it looked like to me. It was translucent. You could see through it, but yet it had a form, and it had a masculine energy to it. And I will tell you now that I now know it's my grandfather that was the angel that came and got me. So yes, we do see our deceased loved ones on the other side. They will all be there, along with your pets, okay? Your pets do cross over. So your furry friends, your feathered friends, their spirits are on the other side as well. You're not going to ever lose them as well. And that brings a lot of joy to people, knowing that their doggy or their cat or whatever their pet was that they grew up with or have now, when they pass on, that their spirit is waiting for them on the other side. I grew up in a really religious household. So we were Lutheran and Southern Baptist is the way I grew up. And this car crash to me has totally transformed my belief systems, because what I experienced on the other side, Daniela, was a presence, a God, a greatness, an intelligence, an energy that was pure love. There was no judgment. There's no condemnation. There's no wrath of God coming on you. There's none of this that I grew up believing, the Catholics, the Lutherans, that God is judgmental and critical, and you have to obey these rules, and if you don't follow them, you're going to a place called hell, all that stuff that puts you in a state of fear, okay? And that is what God is not. God is not fear, and God is not judging you. We judge ourselves, and we judge each other, and I can tell you that's worse than anything. And so we have got to stop judging ourselves. when we make a mistake, beating ourselves up over it, shaming ourselves. I should have done this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have eaten that whole pint of ice cream. I should have, all these shoulds. Take should out of your vocabulary, and don't tell your children or your other people, you should have done this. It's a very shaming message that you're giving, and it has a very low vibration. So notice how many times a day you say should to yourself or somebody else, and take that word out of your vocabulary. That's the first thing in terms of not judging yourself, is starting to become aware how many times you do judge yourself, because there's nothing on the other side that's going to judge you. That is all a man-made concept designed to keep you in fear. And if you're in fear, then you can be controlled. And that's what the message was to me, is God is love. In any organization or person or theology that says you have to fear, quote, God, that is man's interpretation, and it's not true. And it keeps you in fear. So when you're in fear, you don't have clarity. When you're in fear, you're operating out of that part of your brain that's the amygdala. You've heard of that fight, flight, freeze that you get into, a panicky. That's your brain, your nervous system operating out of that. You need to be operating out of this prefrontal cortex where your parasympathetic system is engaged, and you can rest and digest and you have clarity. But every time we get into fear and worry, we get hijacked by this part of the brain, and you're never going to make a clear decision. You're not going to have clarity with it. And what you wind up doing, Daniela, is you sabotage yourself because you're not thinking clearly. You're reacting to the situation. And the universe God is always working for us, not against us. And when you get in a lot of worry and fear, you start seeing things as it's working against me. It doesn't want me to have this, and all these other explanations. But you are love. That's the bottom line. And the basic theme on the other side is we are all love and oneness. Actually, we don't talk in heaven. The way you communicate over there is through vibration and through telepathy. So when I went up with my angel to the other side, I could hear other beings talking, and they were other angels, okay? And I will tell you, angels do exist. They exist in many forms. They can actually be a physical person, or they can be like the angels that you read in the Bible, the archangels, those kind of angels. So angels exist in many levels and many forms. And what they said was that we here on earth need to ask for help. We have to remember that we are given free will, and we have choices, and we can make choices in our lives to do this or not do this. And so as a result of that, we have to ask the spiritual realm for help. And we forget to do that. And they are willing to help us. They want to help us. They're eager to help us. We just have to say, hey, angels, please help me today as I go through my day, to be mindful, to be loving and kind to other people, to protect me during the day, whatever it is. If you have a big presentation or whatever, help me to be articulate and to be confident in my presentation. Ask for help. And I ask for even things like parking spaces. When I'm at a place and I can't find a parking space, I'll say, angels, help me with a parking space. Please help me find one. And Daniela, you may think it's crazy, and you may think it's, why should I waste my time asking the angels for help with a parking space? They don't mind at all. They are just so glad you're communicating with them and asking them, and then they will provide the evidence. That parking space will show up. So that was the conversation that was going on, that it wasn't in English or German or any other language you'd understand. It was telepathy and vibration that I was able to understand that, and then I somehow am able to translate that back into English. And the issue with a lot of people that have come back from death is we don't have the words in our language and our vocabulary to adequately describe the experience on the other side, because it is so beyond blissful. The colors on the other side, I will tell you, there are more colors that are in that Crayola color box, or nail colors. You go into the nails parlor and they have all these colors and all these different names. I'm telling you, there are more colors in the world than just that. And they're brilliant and they're vibrant. music, okay? You're hearing music. Your eyes, our physical eyes, can only see maybe 45 degrees outward. On the other side, you can see 360 in the future all at once. It all is like, there's no time on the other side. That's another concept that's hard to realize is there's no clock, there's no sense of time. Something that feels like this on that side could be 20 years here on Earth, okay? So there's no perspective or basing anything in a literal time-space reality. It's all just, you see it all and you absorb it all at once. Just goes to show you don't have to have a near-death experience to have these conscious awakenings. And that's what it is it's you are awakening to who you really are, Daniela. We all come into this life with something called spiritual amnesia. Okay, we forget who we really are at a soul level. And we come into this world and we're this beautiful bundle of joy and love, and we're perfect. There's not a thing wrong with us. But we have parents and society figures and cultures that put all these filters on us and says, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not this, you're not that. And so we start believing these things which are not true, but we believe them anyway. And unfortunately, we have to spend the rest of our lives unlearning that and realizing that at the soul level, you are perfect. You are radiant, you're glorious, you're beautiful. There's nothing to be fixed. And that is what our journey is on this planet this time, is to awaken that amnesia that you've been in, that memory loss of who you were on the other side, and understand that death is just it's the next transition. And it's not to be feared, because it's gonna happen. Whether you want it to or not, is going to happen to every single person on this planet. 8 billion of us, we're all going to go. Some of us are going to go sooner than later. And that is why it is so important to start having this discussion and changing the narrative around death from doom and gloom and depression and negativity to one of beauty and light and love and joy. And yes, we still have to honor that human part of us, that when someone dies, that you go through this, there's still suffering and there's pain and there's the loss and the grief of that. And we have to compassionately hold that and help people heal from that. But at the same time, you need to remember the bigger cosmic consciousness that we're involved in here and the benevolence of that. And it's going to help us make our transition smoother and lighter and more loving, and help others too when we can remember that bigger piece of things. And that's what's really important, because like you said, that soul regression, our soul, this isn't our first rodeo, so to speak, of coming back and incarnating and learning lessons. We've done this before, and that's why things feel like, man, that person looks familiar, or deja vu, or I've done this before, because somewhere in your unconsciousness, or your consciousness, is stored there. But we're running around unconscious. 95% of what we're doing is based on the imprints we got early in life. And we've got to stop and start changing these patterns and belief systems that were not true, or that worked for us when we were children, like the identity of being a people pleaser. I thought, if I just pleased my parents enough, they would love me and they would appreciate me and they would adore me and that they would do anything. But what I realized is when that crash happened, they blamed me because I was in the car with someone who was drunk. Okay, and I should have known better. That's their mentality, and they've never deviated from that blame. And that has caused me more pain than all the physical injuries, because I realized they conditionally loved me. And they also said I disappointed God. And in the way I grew up, if you disappoint God, well, you're going to hell, and there's no, you can ask to be forgiven, but it doesn't feel like you were forgiven because you don't have this relationship with this God figure. It's all either loving, doing it his way, or you're being judged or condemned. So I had to reconceptualize God, and that's why I call what I went through a spiritual transformational experience, because everything that I learned and believed was turned on its head when I went on to the other side, and it wasn't true. And it's been very difficult for me to change my beliefs when my family still believes the same way, and they don't believe me because it's so far removed from what they have been taught and what they are entrenched in. And so I've had to let that go. I share my experience of God and the angels and all this as maybe an alternative way for people to start thinking about things, but God is not the problem. God doesn't cause the wars. Man does all of this in the name of God. And there are so many lessons that you can learn from near-death experiences and experiences such as yours. And several of them are, the first one is we don't die. Our spirit, our soul does not die. It continues to live on. We're not alone. You may think you're alone, and when COVID happened, a lot of people died and they didn't have anybody near them. And the truth of the matter is you come into the world alone, and you're going to die alone, so to speak. And those people are coming in. The veil is very thin between this dimension and the spiritual dimension. When you're in the process of dying, they all start to come in. And that's why you'll see when someone is dying, they'll start talking to other, it's like, who are you talking to? They're not, your mother's not in the room, or your daddy's not, all these people, but they're seeing them because they're seeing them on the other side. So they're in and out. It's not the morphine. It's not the drugs they're being given. They are actually in and out of this world and the spiritual world. And they're seeing all these people, and they're trying to connect to them and reach out and grab them. You'll see this happening as someone is making their transition, and they're going, so they're not alone. So anytime you think that you physically needing to be there for someone as they pass, know you can energetically and spiritually be there for them. That is what really matters. And I will say, every single one of us is on a healing journey here. Every one of us is going to encounter something that's going to cause us to need to wake up and look at a belief system that we've held on to that may not be true, and that is sabotaging us. And so it is time to start going, why do I believe that about God? Just because my mother believed it, and her mother, and the great-grandmother, just because they believed it doesn't make it true. You have to find something that works for you. And that's why I think more and more people are starting to question organized religion, because it is very rule-based, and God is not rule-based. God is love, so the rules are being created by man and these organizations, and rules are designed to be either adhered to or not. And if you don't adhere to them, then there's something wrong with you. And there goes the message that, something's wrong with you when there's nothing wrong with you. I will tell you, you do have a life review at death. I did not have a life review. I think for me, what I understood is that I had lived for 19 years in a very controlled, my father was right about everything. He was like a mini dictator. We had to do whatever he said. He was in the military. My dad always knew what was best for us. We could never question that. We could never let our feelings out. If we were angry or hurt, we could never express those emotions, so you learn to bottle off and disconnect your emotions from your intellect, and that actually does not serve you later in life, and you start winding up with a lot of physical illnesses that are manifesting as a result of not dealing with emotions and repressed emotions. And we all have emotions that we have encountered in our life that we didn't allow ourselves to really feel. We just went right through it, didn't, and a lot of times for people, it's trauma that they don't want to feel, or that their body is still shut down for. You have to remember, my memory didn't come back for 19 years, Danielle. All I remembered was the bright white light. And then I'm working in a government organization one day. I go to work, get my coffee, and boom, my memory comes back that clear of how I was sitting in the car, then going to the other side. And I'm sitting here going, is this true? Am I really remembering this right? Because our society has caused us to doubt our memories if they don't come back immediately. And for some people, your body is so traumatized, and if you don't have the support and the resources to process the trauma the right way, you are probably, you're better off not having to remember what actually happened, because this changed my entire world and it changed who I am. I am not the same person that I was at age 19. I don't have the same beliefs, and that's what we're here to do, is to evolve on a soul level and not be a mini me of our parents or someone saying that we should be this or that or the other in life. So that life review you're going to have is going to be everything that you say, that you think, and that you do, your behaviors here on earth and how it affects other people. So you're going to be put in the opposite position, and you're going to understand how what you said, thought, and did affected other people. It's not a judgment. It is simply letting you observe and learn from what your actions caused to other people. So we need to be mindful. We need to be kind. We need to be loving. And here's the other thing. You never know when you're going to die. In America, unfortunately, we have mass shootings, it seems like, every week. Little kids are dying. I mean, Sandy Hook from years ago, those were all first graders, 20 first grade, 6-year-olds. They were murdered, okay? So we never know if we're going to come home from work today. So we need to prepare for it, and we need to be more mindful and kind and present with the people that we are talking to, and realize, Daniela, what if I never talk to you again? How would I like the conversation to end? Yes, you still have to put up boundaries. You have to put limits with toxic people, but this is being present to the idea that death can happen at any point, and am I prepared for it? And that is the other point, is start preparing for your own death. Make it understood what your wishes are. And I certainly didn't think I was going to die at 19. So it's a conversation we need to start having with, younger, with kids as well. Age appropriate, of course, but there's a lot of people who have lost one of their two parents or role models, and they're always asking the other role model or the parent, well, what if something happens to you? What if you die? Am I going to be okay? Or are you going to die, mommy or daddy? And the natural reaction is to say, no, I'm not going to die. I'm healthy. I'm taking care of myself. You're okay, because you want to alleviate their fear. You don't want to have them to have anxiety or worry about that. But there's no guarantee you're going to live, okay? So it's best if you can have the conversation that, honey, I'm doing everything I can to stay healthy and be well, and I don't think I'm going to die. I don't have any intention. But if something happened to me and I was in a crash or something, and I was in the, something happened, I was on a ventilator, and unable to make decisions, that you're going to be okay. You're going to go live with Uncle Jim and Aunt Nicole, and you're going to have to switch schools. But, give them a narrative of what's going to happen if, heaven forbid, something should happen to you. And that alleviates their fear and their anxiety. They're going to be financially taken care of. They don't have to step up and be the man of the house now that daddy's gone. That's putting way too much pressure and stress on a child, to do that, to fill those shoes. And that child is going to be massively stressed, full of anxiety, possibly depression, having to live up to that. And we all have this gift. They're called the clairs, whether it's clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant. There are different ways that we can communicate or get messages from the other side. But it really, you have to suspend disbelief, and you have to be open for it. And it is magical. It's mystical. I wrote my book, You Are Deathless. Here it is. It took me 13 years to write that. But what I want to show you is I put this credential up here. BTDT. Do you know what that stands for? It means been there, done that. So I've been to the other side. I've done that, and I've come back. Because there's certain things in our life that we have experienced that there's no education or degrees in it. So how do you tell somebody, I have this experience that I think can help you? So I tell people, if you have something like that, put that on your resume. I've been there, done that. In the Bible, it talks about Jesus' resurrection, and Lazarus was resurrected. Every day, there are people that have had things happen to them where they have been resurrected. That term, I was resurrected. I was not able to get my heart starting together. Starting again. I can't consciously will myself to say, heart start beating, because your whole brain is shut down. You can't coordinate any of that. It is a divine mystical intervention, and that is exactly, I was resurrected from the dead, and that's what many of the near-death stories are about, people that have died and have been resurrected. So that term applies to thousands or millions of people. It's not just Jesus that experienced it. They told me I was coming back. I don't feel like I had a choice. They said, they told me I was going to go back, and my message was going to be to tell people not to be afraid of death. And I said, no, I wanted to stay. And I did try a couple more times. Once I was back in the hospital, I had, like I said, the near death in the operating room. And then I had another near death where I suffocated. My lungs filled up with fluid from a fluid overload in the hospital. So I was trying to get back there a couple of times, and the angels kept saying, nope, you got to stay in your body, and you got to stay there. You have work to do. So I'm glad now that I've come back, but it's been a really hard road, a journey. I've gone through so much in terms of transforming these beliefs, and even my own health journeys. I talk about that in the book a lot, is my healing journey, and looking for other modalities to help me with all of my lingering and chronic health conditions that I have. And I have also used shamanism, had a shamanic soul retrieval, and found that very useful, because I'm not sure if you're real aware of soul loss. So it's parts of your soul that fragment, and when you go through a trauma, they leave you. It's too difficult to process. And so when you are running around and your energy body is open like that, it's causing you a lot of discomfort, disease, illnesses, all of these things, and you can't ever seem to resolve something. It keeps coming back up and back up, So I talk a lot about soul loss, and that for people that have tried so many different healing methods, and they're still not being able to achieve a healthier state or get at peace with something or resolve something, that they may want to look at soul retrieval. And you can Google the term, and soul loss, soul fragmentation. But what is very interesting to me is there's 3 major symptoms of soul loss. And the first one is you don't want to be here. And that was for me. I didn't want to come back into this body that I could see from the other side. I looked down, I could tell you exactly what I was wearing. I was in the ditch, I was dead. I saw my corpse basically laying in the ditch dead. And I did not want to get back into that body and deal with all the suffering on a physical level. I didn't know if I was going to be able to walk again. I mean, there were so many unknowns based on my injuries that it was like, I don't want to deal with the pain and the suffering that this is going to incur. So that was a checkoff for me. You don't want to be here. And this low-level, consistent feeling that something is missing, okay? And for me, it's interesting in this particular one, a lot of compulsive behaviors and addictions fall into this. Something in your life is missing, and you're going to food or alcohol or shopping or whatever the addiction is, busyness, in order to avoid it. And a lot of times depression goes in with this one. Something is missing in your life. And what that happened to me for the 20 years that my memory was not there. I was still searching for a God in the Protestant church that I could relate to. I developed an eating disorder because my mother told the doctor that when the doctor said Nicole needs psychological help to deal with this trauma, she said Jesus was our psychiatrist and psychologist, and she would be just fine. And I have to tell you, Daniela, Jesus never came and sat on the sofa and said, let's talk about your illness, or let's talk about why you compulsively eat. And I lived with compulsive eating, binge eating disorders, it's known now, for 20 years. Okay, that whole time that I didn't have the memory, I was binging because I was so lonely and depressed and disconnected from God and Source. I could not remember that God of love, and I couldn't find that connection to God again. And once I got the memory, boom, it all started coming back, and I was able to heal that. And then the last thing, the third symptom is you can't get over it. And that just is this constant loop in your head of you can't get over something. So if any of those three symptoms speak to you, maybe you would like to investigate seeking out a shaman and doing a soul retrieval. I work very part-time doing neuro-emotional technique. And I had a full-time practice, and I've worked in the wellness industry my entire career. And now I'm at the point where I want to focus on spiritual wellness, because when we look at the 4 domains of wellness, the physical, I'm a dietitian, so I can tell you about food all you want, what to eat, not to eat. But if you're getting triggered from a mental or emotional standpoint, you're going to go to the food, whether you know it's good for you or not. So I got into neuro-emotional technique to deal with these repressed emotions, to help with that, to help myself. And I've still been doing that very part-time, and it's called NET. And I have found that to work for me, and it's been a game changer in my life. And then I also have been out promoting my book and trying to get the message out to people about not fearing death and to get themselves prepared for their death. I will tell you right now, when people ask me, is there a hell? And you probably know this too. It's like, hell no, there's no hell. Hell is actually a place on earth that are, war zones that are going on and blown up, and people have no food. And, right now the fires in LA, what is just, that is hell for people, okay? It's not a place you're going to burn up in. That's a whole scenario, a story created by men, white men at that, designed to keep you in fear. Well, and those people that do have a negative NDE experience, they call those distressing NDEs. And a lot of times, Danielle, it's based on where the person is in their life. Are they contemplating suicide? Are they in a really dark night of the soul? So a lot of times that has to do with where they're at. Not to say I really believe they do happen, but overwhelmingly 90% or more of the NDE experiences all have these same common lessons, that we don't die, that God is love and we are love, and love is the most important thing that matters. And the life review, all of these things have come out, and most of the scientific articles support that as well. So yes, they do happen, but I think a lot of times you have to look, in our society, we attach the word good and bad. Those are man-made earth terms that exist in order to evaluate ourselves and others. But on the other side, there's no good or bad. It's all greatness. So there's no bad to contrast it. And that's why I think it's really hard to understand that when you're in a dark place, that you can come out of that. And a lot of times the people in these distressing NDEs start in the dark place and they wind up in the light too. That's the other thing I've seen. They go, I think there's different levels that you can go to, and they go to a different level where they're having to learn, they're a little bit slower to going up, but we all, they had to learn that behavior. They were not born unless they got it in utero, what I will call the evilness. Most of the time that is behavior that was perpetrated upon them, and therefore they became that way. So that is, their soul was never that way, but they never believed that and consequently evolved into that. And I believe that they're in a different level, having to work some things out, but they will absolutely have to come back again, and on their life review they will see how their actions hurt other people. That's my belief. It changes your life and it wakes you up, and it's like, okay, more and more of us need to wake up on this planet and start treating one another, the planet Earth, and all sentient beings with love and respect and value and worth. And that's why I say we're one, we're a consciousness, a collective consciousness of one on the other side. We're all eternal sparks of God. You do not need an external conduit to get to God. God is within you, within all of us. And so I bless whatever I'm going to eat just to clear it, clean it, and to know that it is helping me and my nutritional status. But I applaud people that can do like you and eat cleaner, and it's better for the environment and just everything. And I think that has got to change with the coronavirus. I'm a dietitian by training. So these whole SARS viruses that are coming from animals and going to humans is a wake-up call for us to look at the way we're treating animals, especially in these slaughterhouses. And we have not heeded that call. We saw what happened with COVID and all the chicken and beef slaughterhouses. Those were the first people to get COVID. And we didn't change the way we practice slaughtering them. And it's going to happen again. I mean, I'm not predicting doom and gloom here, but if we don't learn from the past and the mistakes we made in the past, we're bound to repeat them again. And we have to change the methods by which we are farming our animals out.